last few weeks, the incoming president has referred to Canada as the 51st state and threatened a 25% blanket tariffs. I know you're familiar with this on all Canadian imports. He also just a few days ago called our prime minister the governor of the great state of Canada.
Donald Trump has continued his hilarious trolling of Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. The latest being a post on Truth Social which read, "It was a pleasure to have dinner the other night with Governor Justin Trudeau of the great state of Canada. I look forward to seeing the governor again soon so that we may continue our in-depth talks on tariffs and trade, the result of which will be truly spectacular for all."
Should we be interpreting that as a joke or something more, in your view?
Well, I think as the saying goes, Trump is kidding on the straight. If asked, he'd say, of course it's a joke. And, Justin and I have a very good relationship.
I like the Prime Minister Prime Minister Trudeau. Nice guy, good guy. No, I like him.
But I think it's an indication of what he thinks of Trudeau. And, it's mean. It's sort of a playground kind of thing, but that's Donald Trump.
You wrote in your book, The Room Where It Happened, I remember reading a few years ago, some descriptions of meetings that they had had, in particular at the G7, and the view of Donald Trump toward the Prime Minister. What was it like at that time? Do you think it was personal animosity, or it was more just about the issues and the sort of disagreement over tariffs, for example, at the time?
No, Trump doesn't care about issues. He cares about Donald Trump. And where I first saw the relationship in operation was at the G7 in Canada in 2018, where the other members of the G7 basically forced Trump into some statements in the outcome document that he didn't particularly like. I'd have to say I didn't like them either. But anyway, it was agreed. Trump got on a plane, Air Force One, because we were headed to Singapore for his first meeting with Kim Jong-un. And as we were flying over the Atlantic, I was sleeping, but Trump was up because he had heard that Prime Minister Trudeau had, in his view, insulted him in the last press conference at the close of the G7.
We had some strong, firm conversations on trade and specifically American tariffs.
And Trump, after he woke me up and some others, decided he was going to withdraw from the outcome document, which is unprecedented to say the least. But he was so outraged at what at that Trudeau press conference that that's what he did. So my take on the relationship is that I don't know what it was before I saw it in action at the G7, but afterward it was in deep trouble.
Is there a way to navigate that or recover from that this second time around? And I ask not just sort of out of this like gossipy, how do people get along, but because this threat that he has made would be devastating to the Canadian economy. It would instantly put it into a recession. So against that backdrop, I guess, if the federal government here were to ask you for advice on how to navigate this moving forward, what would you tell them?
Well, it's not pleasant news, but the thing to do is flatter Trump and try and work on him that way. I think the foreign leader who was most successful at dealing with Trump in his first term was Shinzo Abe.
Abe, do you know Abe was a great man? He was a great man.
Abe didn't really lather on the flattery, but he spent time with Trump constantly, on the phone, in person, on the golf course.
Now the president is returning the favor, inviting Abe for a weekend of golf at his lavish Florida getaway, and possibly a ride on Air Force One.
Never letting much time go by between conversations, just making sure they were in touch, telling him what Japan's interests were, so that it didn't come to a point where there was a crisis and he needed something from Trump.
同盟というのは信頼がなければ機能しません。私はトランプ次期大統領はまさに信頼することができる、信頼できる指導者であるとこのように確信をいたしました。
It wasn't always successful for Abe. It certainly took a lot of his time. But as I say, I think it worked more than any other approach that I saw during my time there.
Mr. Abe gave Mr. Trump a golf club and received golf goods, including golf shirts, in return.
If that were to be employed here, and it seems, I should say, there are some indications. For example, the Prime Minister flew down to Mar-a-Lago to have a meeting with the incoming president a few weeks ago on the Friday evening of the American Thanksgiving long weekend. Like, if that is pursued, do you think that relationship you witnessed could turn into a different one? Like, essentially, I mean, your book talked a lot about this too. Like, Trump doesn't really like to forgive and forget, but is that possible in this instance, do you think?
Well, it's always possible if somebody kisses the ring. I mean, that's what Trump likes. It's not positions on tariffs. That's not the issue. And, you know, I'd have to say for the current government or subsequent governments, Trump numbers kind of come and go, 25%, 5%, 80%. Who knows what it'll be? That's designed to throw people off their stride. I think it's important to maintain contact with all levels in the Trump administration as it's put together. I think a trade war between the U.S. and Canada and Mexico would be a catastrophically bad decision on Trump's part, but he doesn't understand how tariffs work. He thinks the exporting company pays the tariff. He doesn't realize it's the American importer that pays it and then passes the cost on to American consumers. So good luck with trying to educate him on that.
You really think even after all these years that he still thinks that that's the case?
I can point to you the NBC evidence with Kristen Welker a few days ago where she said, you know, people think that American consumers end up paying the cost of increased tariffs. And Trump said, quote, "I don't agree."
Yeah, I remember it well. She said economists from all different angles say that that's the case. And you're absolutely right. He said, "I don't agree."
Economists of all stripes say that ultimately consumers pay the price of tariffs.
I don't believe
Can you guarantee American families won't pay more?
I can't guarantee anything. I can't guarantee tomorrow. But I can say that we had the greatest economy in the history of our country. And I had a lot of tariffs on a lot of different countries, but in particular China. We took in hundreds of billions of dollars, and we had no inflation.
Just wanted to get you also, Ambassador, on another issue that certainly you've been vocal on, and we're very interested in here in Canada. That's the sort of preservation of NATO moving forward. Because in that same interview, he did very specifically say something, to be fair, that he said before, which is basically the prospect of leaving the military alliance is there if, quote unquote, member states don't pay up. As it stands, Canada is one of those member states who has not met the NATO target. It just this summer, our federal government outlined a plan to, well, sort of the broad strokes of a plan to get there by 2032. Do you think Canada is in trouble when it comes to defense spending with Trump in the presidency?
Well, I think he'll beat whoever is prime minister over the head with it constantly. The fact is the United States has to defend Canada because we're all around you. And if the Russian missiles ever come over the pole, that's something that's obviously critical to both of us. You should get defense spending up to 2% of GDP. I mean, it's that simple. But that's not enough to satisfy Trump. That's the ostensible point. But in other conversations on NATO, he's talked about how foreign governments, particularly the European Union, have negotiated unfair trade deals with the United States. He has a lot of gripes, and the actual withdrawal from NATO could be precipitated by what happens in Ukraine or a number of other events. And basically, it's because Trump thinks we defend Europe and Canada. We don't get anything out of it, and they don't pay. So why are we in NATO? That's what he thinks. And the best hope, I think, of avoiding American withdrawal is to distract him for the next 4 years.
Do you think NATO's in trouble?
I do. I really do. I think our other bilateral alliances with countries like Japan and South Korea are also in trouble.
Okay, I got to leave it on that note. Ambassador Bolton, pleasure to have you on our program. Thank you for making the time.
Thanks for having me.